Thank you. Thank you, sir. So now, if there is any indigenous education and traditional knowledge, so as to lay certain foundation of education on the basis of which our education system should be laid. So based on that importance, this morning a press conference is called. Prior to the modern school education introduced in Nagaland, Nagas did not have any formal system of education. It was a very informal and non-formal system of education, lots of interaction, lots of education taking place among the Nagas through informal interaction. And we do not have school, college, university in Naga society. However, Nagas had their own refined system of learning. Nagaland was a storehouse of vast indigenous knowledge, even prior to the introduction of the formal school system. We had a unique method of learning through hands-on practical experiences, practical life, and oral tradition. These indigenous practices were influenced by deeply rooted Naga's ethos of pragmatism. We have too many philosophy of education, but Nagas were the practitioners of pragmatism, of philosophy of education. We learn through practice, and Nagas believe that knowledge is generated through practice. And that is why we urgently need to bring back this great Naga tradition to the school system of education to produce well-rounded and productive individuals. Traditionally, Naga's ethos was limited to the idea that ideas were formed on the basis of practice and observation. Nagas had a strong belief that experience and practice comes first before learning, and experience precedes ideas, and according to this philosophy, children were guided by the reality of the real world. So Naga philosophy of foundational learning should form the basis of all future learning experiences. We need to see that our Naga indigenous system of learning should be the basis of our modern school education system. We cannot just bring all kinds of education systems available all over the world. We have to lay foundation, and we need to have our own system of education. And based on that system of education which we have, then we will be able to promote our system by taking the advantage of new technology, new advancement, even the new policy, national education policy, and all kinds of policies, programs that will be coming. The Nagas can take advantage of those and to promote our own system of education. But we need the basis, we need the foundation of education. And in order to lay this foundation, we must use the we must use the. Please come, madam. Yes, please come. We must lay our foundation of education based on our Naga tradition or Naga cultural values. This is the main topic that we are discussing in this press conference. The National Education Policy 2020 is also committed to promote tribal language, tribal knowledge, and indigenous and traditional ways of learning, to introduce specific courses on tribal ethno-medicinal practices. We have lots of traditional knowledge, even the medicinal knowledge. Our Naga villages, they have lots of knowledges. So we need to bring those medicinal knowledge, ethno-medicinal knowledge also into our traditional, our Naga present system of education. Even in counseling, Nagas are really, emotional, and we have lots of skills, lots of skills and techniques which can heal the emotion. Especially our Nagas, we are empathetic. We are very empathetic. We have lots of patience for others. We have lots of sympathetic feelings for other people. So these are there, and these kind of skills, qualities, human qualities, should be also developed so that we can use this thing into the present modern psychological counseling, healings, psychotherapies. And it doesn't mean that the Western psychotherapies alone are the solution to mental problem. But we have lots of things, and all these things now we need to promote in our system. Today, our modern education system needs its own basis founded on our own culture, tradition, and values practiced by our people. Education system cannot flourish by merely importing or borrowing education system which is happening around the world. So education in Nagaland has to be built on a firm ground of its own social, cultural values. Our education system must respond to the needs and aspirations of the people of Nagaland. And along with this line of national policies, education in Nagaland needs to be deeply rooted in Naga reality and its composite culture promoted by the modern advancement of science and technology. So in this context, a school curriculum of Naga Indigeneousness is the need of the hour for the children of Nagaland to learn our rich intellectual, cultural values and heritages so as to inculcate in children a strong sense of love for Naga patriotism. An indigenous Naga curriculum would celebrate the ideas of the Naga philosophers, thinkers, leaders, parents, and elders. So this should become the state agenda. The indigenous Naga education system should become the state agenda in Nagaland. And so that our education become a rooted, a Naga rooted and a pride in Nagaland. Children develop a pride in Nagaland, and we live the real Naga. We produce a real Naga children by promoting this indigenous indigenous education system in Nagaland. And also, as I have been observing that Naga children are really losing the value of mother tongue. Many children, they do not know how to speak in their own mother tongue. In 2010, when our Sir Viprabhu was the director, the SCRT conducted one research project. There, about 10% of the Naga children say that they would prefer to speak in Nagamese rather than the mother tongue. So, if that is the trend, then today Nagas, the upcoming younger generation, they don't care about the mother tongue. And tomorrow, if this trend goes, tomorrow the mother tongue, which is a rich culture, which has lots of things to give us, will go, and there will be a great extinction of our language. And when our language goes away, then the root of the Nagas will go away, and we will have no Naga-ness. And the patriotism and the value of being Nagas will be finished, and therefore a foundation needs to be laid, and we cannot afford to go on borrowing all kinds of education system from all over the world, but we need to lay our own foundation of education, and in view of this importance, this conference is called. So I want to thank all of you for having active participation. I want
that we need to have Naga traditional knowledge and indigenous education, even the very system of education we have in our state today. He has highlighted about the importance of the Naga traditional knowledge and education in brief, and he has also touched upon the national education policy about the importance of having traditional knowledge and indigenous education, even in the very system of education we have in the country today. Well, today I also taking the opportunity would like to touch upon a few points of concern. Well, we may not be able to cover all areas of concern due to limitations of time, as we have also got some engagements somewhere else after this very program. And therefore, I just would like to touch upon 4 or 5 areas of concern relating to the subject matter which we are going to talk about. In brief, indigenous tribal cultural values, education or knowledge and education, it encompasses the following areas of the tribal ways of life. For example, social, moral, spiritual, ethical, care and respect for nature, etc. The Nagas, we have no written record of our history. our culture and tradition. And therefore, in the absence of any such written records of our own, everything is passed down to us through word of mouth orally. Despite the absence of modern education in our tribal-dominated society, we have survived thus far based on time-tested primitive ways of life. In the National Education Policy of 2022 and also all other national education policies, they are talking about the importance of the culture of India. It says that it is a treasure trove of culture, arts, literatures, languages, music, dances, food, etc. Therefore, we have a popular slogan in India, unity in diversity, as India is built with such a huge diversity of cultures, arts and languages, religions, etc. All national education policies says that promotion of Indian arts and culture is important, not only for the nation, but also for the individual as well. Hence, it should be made a major learning competency for all children in the country. Well said. However, when it comes to the actual textual learning contents, we find nothing about the diverse cultures of India except the culture of the ruling people who are the majority in India. It is so embarrassing and conspicuous to find that hardly anything is mentioned about the people and the culture of the Northeast India in the textbooks read by the students in the country. Therefore, it is nothing less than a cultural invasion of the majority over the minorities. As a result of the lopsided policy of the system of education in India, many cultures in India are put into danger of extinction. The unfortunate alienation is mostly felt by the tribal-dominated people in the Northeast region in India. Therefore, many a times the national education policy guidelines is found to be farcical because we find nothing about our tribal cultures when it comes to implementation in the real classroom situation. The indigenous tribal cultures, knowledge and the ways of life is in no way inferior to any other culture. That's what I strongly believe. All cultures in the world are God-given gifts to the peoples living in different parts of the world. Therefore, there is no question of superior or inferior cultures in the world we are living today. Therefore, the national policy of education is expected to give equal treatment to all cultures, irrespective of size and numbers. We may discuss in brief about a few yet important areas of concern about the cultures of the indigenous tribal culture, their knowledge, their practices in the form of informal education in our day-to-day life. The first point I would like to share with you is the language. The National Education Policy talks about the medium of instruction through mother tongue till elementary level. However, in the absence of a common language, we have adopted English as the medium of instructions at all levels of education. In view of the given situation, a three-language formula was adopted by our state government in lieu of mother tongue. However, in the absence of any developed textbooks and learning materials, by most of the Naga tribes, alternative English was introduced. As a result, 80 to 90% of the Naga children opted for alternative English in lieu of mother tongue. I believe, as already shared by my friend Dr. Zavisek, I think it was in the year 2013, I conducted a survey in the city of Kohima on the changing pattern of languages spoken by the Naga children. A sample of 1,500 school children was collected from both government and private schools in the city of Kohima. The findings are like this. 1. More than 10% of the Naga children, they can't speak, they can't read and write their own mother tongue. Number 2, they speak Nagamese and English even with their own parents, even at homes. They speak to their own friends and teachers, even in Nagamese and English. They even speak to their own people in Nagamese in churches. That's very interesting as well as shocking. That way, our children are losing their own identity and getting loss of their own cultural roots. Today, the percentage will be much higher. In the light of the given situation, SCRT has conceptualized the idea of replacing alternative English and introduced Nagaland heritage studies to facilitate in helping Naga children learning their own dialects and cultures. Today in Nagaland University, we have a department of Tenidi, especially for the Tenime speaking people. I'm happy for that because it is my language. But why only Tenidi in Nagaland University? I always ask this question, why only Tenidi under Nagaland University? Why not all other Naga dialects and languages? I believe that there should be a department or institute of Naga languages in Nagaland University so that the students should be given the opportunity to do the research and develop and promote their own languages, which should be fair to all dialects languages. All Naga languages are today endangered as the number of speakers is dying with the passing of times. And therefore, let us not allow it to die or go extinct. I think this is high time for all of us to work together, to join our hands together and save our language. Number 2, Naga arts and dresses. Naga children have developed a craze about the alien cultures, such as the Western cultures and the ways of life. And with the passing of times, even the Hindi movies, their songs, their dialogues, their dresses are becoming very, very popular with Naga children. Even our women find themselves more comfortable in pants. Am I right? And salwar kameez, etc. And they're throwing away their traditional wears. That's a sad thing which is happening in a society. That way we are losing our identity. And therefore, it is high time that we must save our culture and our identity, even in terms of arts, culture, and our dresses. Number 3, Naga handicrafts. We use so many materials which is locally available, especially like wood, plants, leaf, bamboo, etc. And whatever materials been used for our buildings, for our handicraft, everything is eco-friendly and biodegradable. Hence, no pollution, even if there is any waste of materials. We use bamboo for hundreds of items, such as building, houses, tools, implements, household items, including food items in the form of bamboo shoot, which is a favorite for all the Nagas. We should educate and help our children, our students, to replace all pollutant materials such as cups, plates, spoons, etc., made with china clay, glass, plastics, etc., in all hotels and restaurants, and free our lands from all these pollutant materials. Number 4, agricultural practice. Terrace cultivation has been in practice for thousands of years, since time immemorial. Our ancestors, they cared for the nature in preservation of flora and fauna and maintaining ecological balance. Thus, they have protected our forests, trees, and vegetations, and preserving some of the best biodiversity in our land. They utilize the lands, but at the same time, they take care of nature. They till the lands, but they also give rest to the lands for some years to regenerate itself naturally. They may be primitive, yet they live in harmony with nature, which is the need, one of the most important concerns of the modern world. Number 5, values. Our traditional values governs and encompasses our ways of life. A few examples may be cited. You may eat fruit from the trees of other people if you are hungry, but we never pick it and take it away. Number 2, our people, they don't take the best portion, even if they are given the first opportunity to enjoy community feast. And you take the least portion and you give the best portion to other people who are after you. They care, they think and care for other people. They don't think about their own selfish interests. And even the villagers, whenever they go out for community work, said to carry woods, bamboos, or ladies in the field. The one who first reached this destination, they carry the most heavy one and keep the lighter ones for other people. They care for one another. Similarly, they even while taking their food or drinks, they always give thanks to their Creator, to God. They offer their food, their drinks to the God first, giving thanks to God that they have received all these foods in abundance from their Creator. They even give thanks to God, even if whenever they kill a game. Our ancestors, although they are primitive, yet they read the days and months based on moon days, sun position, navigation of the stars in the skies. And they understand, they count the days, they count the months, they count the seasons, and they sow seeds in season. And that way they harvest their produce on time. And therefore, despite the absence of modern education, written or formal education, they live an honest, primitive, simple, yet the best life. And thus they have brought all this to the present generation. And therefore it is high time for all of us even to have a real look at the cultures, the ways of life of our ancestors, and adopt these values. Today, our children are given the best modern, so-called this best modern education. Yet when we look at their life, how they are behaving, how they are reacting, how they take care about themselves and how they do to others, their mentality, their actions, their attitudes. Our children are becoming self-centered, selfish, greedy, and they don't care for other people. That is how we are losing fast of the cultural values which we have inherited from our people. And therefore, if we don't preserve, protect, and promote, and revive this traditional indigenous knowledge and education, in a few years' time, the future of our very society, it will tell a very different story. So for today, I think that should be enough, and we can have some other time. We have so many other areas of concern. And thank you so much for
education system.
As mentioned by our former director, SCRT, Sir Sri Pradu, just now, a big step was initiated by under his leadership when he was the director of SCRT to develop a new subject, separate subject under the nomenclature of the Nagaland Heritage Studies, under which the different tribes, language, vernaculars, language officers came together and they developed common curriculum and syllabus, and based on which the book under the nomenclature of Nagaland Heritage Studies was developed, and in English initially, and it was translated into different tribal languages. There, so many Naga tribal values, indigenous knowledge were taught, were written, and the migration, the origin of Nagas and their tribes, different tribes were also written, and children were meant to study those our roots. So this is one step. Another step is, as you may be aware, that for the first time in the whole country, the state is, each respective state is given the responsibility to develop state curriculum framework. And this is the first of its kind as a result of the National Education Policy 2020. So there, the SCRT Nagaland is also given the responsibility to develop its own state curriculum framework. So in that curriculum framework, the SCRT has developed, was assigned to develop 25 titles, 25 different subject matters. For example, philosophy of education, aims of education, guidance and counseling, value education, social science education, science education, mathematics education. There are 25 titles. And I have roughly gone through those titles. There are so many new indigenous knowledges infused, integrated into the new curriculum framework. And this position paper, the draft position paper is ready. We are going to call a state level seminar initiated at the state government level. So there are so many Naga scholars, intellectuals, educationists will be coming together to see the framework, the draft curriculum framework, so as to infuse their ideas, opinions. So lots of indigenous tools, indigenous toys, and indigenous what they call tools of agricultural tools were also mentioned to be studied by the Naga children, upcoming children. And I learned that a few years ago, some agricultural scientists came to Peggy Street site, and they found that there was no better better way of farming that the modern scientists can give than the terrace cultivation, terracing agricultural farming practiced since time immemorial. So like that, there are so many ways where modern scientists cannot give answer to our traditional way of life. So all these things whatever knowledge, indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge, will be infused into the modern state curriculum framework, and this curriculum framework will be a are expected even in this education system.
To what my colleague Dr. Zatis has just shared. You know, in this present system of education we have now in the country today, we study about the history of the Mughal emperors, Hindu dynasty, slave dynasty. We study about the world history. We study about the world wars. We study about cultures of different nations and countries. But we find nothing about our own people in the system of education we have in the country today. And therefore, our children, by studying, we learn so many things about India, so many things about the world, but nothing of our own. And therefore, that is a very sad state of affair. And therefore, the kind of education our children are learning, yes, nothing bad, learning about other people. But it is also equally important to learn something about your own identity, about your own culture, about your own people. And therefore, finding the irrelevance, totally irrelevance of the kind system of education we have in the country today, we have decided to introduce Nagaland Heritage Studies, where the students are given the opportunity to learn about their own cultures, the migration of our people, where they come from, their language, their cultures, their festivals, their agricultural practices. All these things, the students are given the opportunity to learn about their own cultures, about their own people. And also, not only that, the students are also given the opportunity to learn about the different Naga motifs. See, the different tribal dresses, wares, worn by especially women. So many different designs and patterns. It has got meanings. And the students are given the opportunity learning about the purpose, the meanings of those intricate, colorful, beautiful designs. And also the different motifs we find in our Naga village gates, or even on our buildings. Everything, every figure have got its purpose and meanings. And the students are given the opportunity to learn about those things. The food they eat, the sources of food, how they cultivate. You know, there are so many funny incidences in our schools, which is happening in our schools today. One day a teacher asked a student, "Where do you get your rice?" "From the shelf in the market." To that extent, they are ignorant. Even the very sources of food, it is coming from. And therefore, the agricultural practices, we are given the opportunity to the students to learn about all these things. And also the kind of food, their sources, how it is cultivated. They are given the opportunity to learn and also to practice. And also, for many years we have been using ready-made textbooks, which is readily available in the market. We buy those books and give it to our students to study and learn. But lately we have decided to incorporate our own culture, about our own mythology, about our own history, written by our own people. and also incorporation of the poetry, especially in English. Those poems composed by our own children, we are introducing those things in our locally prepared textbooks. That way, we are trying to make it to the extent possible locally relevant and making it really meaningful to the learners, to our children. That way, in a small way, we are trying to bring about some changes in our system of education. The system of education, the system of education is like this. SCRT is responsible up to elementary level. That is primary to class 8. And from class 9 onwards, it's been looked after by this BSc. And therefore, that linkage has to be made to be upgraded to that of this class 9, 10, 11, and 12. That link is to be developed.
Thank you.
He said, he refused to let me go. He put me into a flower vase and always keep on pouring water and always keep on rekindling my lifetime and again. So it was